Informational presentations. I do not intend to take any action on this unless some members of the committee want to move something forward. So we're going to calmly and quietly discuss fluoridation in municipal water today and have a good discussion here. Looks like first up we have Dr. Beatrice Britton, DDS of Abilene, Kansas on WebEx.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Dr. Beatrice Britton. I am a general dentist. I practice in Abilene, Kansas. I'm a member of the Kansas and American Dental Associations. If you're unfamiliar, Abilene is a rural community in Kansas of about 6,400 people. In addition to Abilene, I also serve the surrounding areas of Solomon, Chapman, Salina, and Clay Center. I moved back to my rural hometown, Abilene, in late 2023 to provide dental care in the community where I knew growing up that it and many rural Kansas communities are in desperate need of healthcare providers. Last year, the Abilene City Commission considered halting the practice of water fluoridation for our town. The final outcome was to continue with water fluoridation. So I'm here before you today because I've been asked to provide information on the background, dental health benefits, and efficacy of water fluoridation. I do apologize for not being able to appear in person, but I'm currently in the middle of a busy day with a full schedule of patients, so I may not be able to stay for the entire duration of the meeting. I am, however, able to speak to you for a few minutes, especially because this is an issue that as a dentist, I feel I have an obligation to provide you information about. Now, part of the reason I'm here is because people are confused about fluoride and how it works. I see patients in my chair all the time who have questions about fluoride, especially recently because they've seen a story on the news or read something online and they don't know what to believe. There are stories and information that seem to claim that regulated water fluoridation in the United States is harmful to general health. But those reports and those claims are often misleading. Not a single credibly recognized major health or scientific organization in the world opposes fluoridation. Not one. Numerous credible scientific studies show that fluoride is safe and beneficial to oral health at regulated low levels. Leading health and scientific organizations endorse water fluoridation, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American and Kansas Dental Associations, the CDC, the World Health Organization, and the U.S. Department of Defense. In fact, the CDC actually recognizes water fluoridation as one of the 10 greatest achievements in public health of the last century, alongside things like seatbelts and the recognition of tobacco as a harmful health product. So the American Dental Association, of which I am a member, has continuously reviewed and endorsed regulated water fluoridation in the United States since 1950. And they, quote, unreservedly endorse the fluoridation of community water supplies as safe, effective, and necessary in preventing tooth decay. So let's start with the basics. Why does your own dentist likely recommend that you brush with fluoride toothpaste, receive fluoride treatments in their office, and drink fluoridated tap water? It's because fluoride can prevent cavities. Fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral. It's present in many foods and most natural water sources, and it can prevent tooth decay. Toothpaste with fluoride provides some protection from decay, but not in the same way as fluoridated water. When a person drinks water with fluoride, some of those fluoride ions will stay in their saliva and provide a topical benefit. That saliva then bathes their teeth in low, safe levels of fluoride throughout the day as they continue to eat and drink things that could harm their teeth. Additionally, when drinking fluoridated water, children whose adult teeth are currently developing under their baby teeth are strengthened by the ingestion of fluoride. It makes these developing adult teeth more resistant to cavities in the future. So, if fluoride is a mineral in many foods and natural water sources, then naturally the next question is, well, if our water already has some fluoride in it naturally, can't we just drink twice as much water? Or can't I just brush my teeth more with fluoride toothpaste and skip the water altogether? Well, the answer is no, because even if your natural water supply has some fluoride already in it, you can't just drink more water or brush your teeth more frequently. Teeth need consistent contact with specific concentrations of fluoride throughout the day in order to stay protected. When a community, quote unquote, fluoridates their water, that means they're increasing the concentration of fluoride in their tap water to reach the 0.7 parts per million concentration that's recommended by US health agencies. Sometimes you'll see this concentration written as milligrams per liter. It's just a different way to refer to the same measurement. So for natural existing fluoride concentration, it just comes down to geological factors. Our water in Abilene, for example, does not naturally have the recommended concentration of fluoride at 0.7 parts per million. So that's why we fluoridate our water. If a community in the United States has natural fluoride levels already at the recommended concentration, then they wouldn't need to add fluoride to their water. It is my professional opinion that water fluoridation is a critical component of good oral health and public health. It can significantly improve the health of all Kansas citizens who have access to it, especially the most vulnerable, being children and the elderly. Dental decay is the most common chronic disease in adults and children in the United States. So fluoride from multiple sources, that being toothpaste, dental offices, and fluoridated water, are needed to maintain good oral health. I advise all of my patients to use fluoridated dental hygiene products, drink fluoridated water, and receive fluoride treatments in my office. Now, to be perfectly honest, as a dentist who fixes teeth all day, my business could benefit from people having more cavities due to a lack of fluoridated water. If our water's not fluoridated, then my patients will likely need more dental work, the amount of tooth decay will be more severe, and the procedures that I need to do to treat that tooth decay will be more expensive. So why am I here? Well, it's because as a dental health provider, it's the right thing to do for my patients in my community. So let me speak locally to the area where I live and practice. Here's a small example. Abilene adds fluoride to their water, like I said, to reach the recommended 0.7 parts per million concentration. The nearby towns of Solomon and Harrington do not. Now, according to the latest data from the CDC, because Solomon does not add fluoride to their natural water, their water only has a natural concentration of 0.3 parts per million. Harrington, again, does not add fluoride to their water, and their water has a natural concentration of 0.34 parts per million. Again, that magic number is 0.7. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment, who evaluates the health of Kansas school children, found in their 2023 screenings that the rate of children in Solomon who needed urgent dental care was nearly 50% higher than in Abilene. And that same rate, the rate of children who needed urgent dental care in Harrington, was more than 300% higher. Now, nearby Salina, a town near us, their water is also fluoridated, like Abilene, and their rate of urgent dental care needs in school-age children was comparable to Abilene. So as the solo doctor in my office, as the only doctor here, I see patients of all kinds, small children, the elderly, and everything in between. We offer comprehensive dental care, including things like basic fillings and crowns, root canals, implants, and in some cases, full mouth extractions and dentures. I have seen firsthand how lack of access to fluoride can very quickly cause extensive and painful dental decay, particularly in children. When people lose access to fluoride, when communities make decisions to stop fluoridating their water, those decisions are typically costly and painful. And I don't mean metaphorically painful. They are oftentimes unnecessarily physically painful for people, especially children, where tooth decay could have been prevented. So when Abilene City Commission was considering halting the water fluoridation of our community, I warned them that I would likely be seeing a lot more young children in my chair missing school in pain from toothaches and more extensive decay. And frequently, these child patients need to be referred to specialty pediatric dentists and sometimes in certain cases put under general anesthesia to fix their dental problems. I would also expect to see more teenagers and young people needing more advanced dental work like root canals, and even in some cases, maybe even full tooth replacement with dentures. As a dental practitioner, I would very much rather spend the majority of my time advocating for my patients and discussing proven ways to prevent cavities, to prevent disease, than operating on a 6-year-old with rampant decay or a 17-year-old who needs some of, if not all of, their teeth taken out. When our city commission considered halting water fluoridation, I heard from dozens of members of the community, both patients and non-patients, who were strongly in favor of continuing to fluoridate our water, which was a practice that had been occurring for nearly 30 years in Abilene. Now, halting water fluoridation can also create new financial burdens for families. In Abilene, it costs about $4,400 to fluoridate our water annually. This comes out to be about 75 cents per citizen each year. Studies have shown in areas where fluoridation has been discontinued, people can expect to develop upwards of 2 to 3 more cavities per person per year. Now, the average single surface dental filling in my office, meaning the smallest and most basic procedure that I can do to fix the cavity on your tooth, can cost upwards of $250, depending on if someone has insurance or is paying out of pocket. And this price is pretty standard for most dental offices. Expenses only go up from there. So this means at my office, without insurance, 3 additional basic fillings per year would cost someone at a minimum $750 per year. In contrast, maintaining access to properly fluoridated water at the recommended concentration could not only potentially prevent those cavities, but could cost that same person just 75 cents per year. So if we're doing the math, treating dental decay without fluoridated water could be costing patients up to 1,000% more per year. Now, many Abilene citizens and Kansans struggle to access the most basic oral hygiene items, including toothbrushes and toothpaste. My office does what it can to help with this issue in Abilene. We're at every resource fair, every charity event, and community outreach opportunity that we can feasibly participate in. Discontinuing water fluoridation would only serve to compound dental health issues, especially for our most vulnerable citizens, that being children and the elderly, who already may have access barriers to good oral health. I care very, very much about my community, and I'm happy to continue to participate in outreach events and provide access to oral health resources, of course. But this is nothing compared with what water fluoridation can do for our Kansas communities to prevent disease. So to close, please just let me reiterate my professional opinion. Disease prevention is always, always preferable. Abilene and other communities in Kansas have benefited significantly from water fluoridation to prevent disease over the past many decades. Thank you so much for your time today, and please do consider speaking with your own dentist about this issue.
Thank you, Dr. Britton. Due to the number of people who wanted to testify here today, we had to limit things. So I'm going to limit questions. If you have questions of any of the presenters today, you have their contact information in your files, please contact them. Next up, we have Kevin Robertson, Executive Director of the Dental Association.
Robertson, Executive Director of the Kansas Dental Association. Thank you for having me here today. I don't believe I've ever been in your committee, so this is kind of a new experience for me, so thank you very much. Dr. Britton's testimony was fabulous. I don't want to repeat everything she said, but there are a couple of things I do want to go over as we talk about it. I am not a dentist, so I want that to be clear. I'm a layman when it comes to kind of the research and everything, but I've been with the Dental Association for a number of years. I think it's important for you to know, again, that the Kansas Dental Association supports community water fluoridation as a safe, cost-effective measure to prevent tooth decay. It's not a medication. It is a mineral, a naturally occurring mineral in the water. It's similar to iodizing salt, fortifying salt with iodine or vitamin D milk things of that nature. I'd like you to really understand really what's going on in your mouth, right? So Dr. Britton, of course, talked about ions and things that are going on as far as fluoridation. But really what's going on in your mouth is full of bacteria. It is full of bacteria. So in the morning, let's say you haven't brushed your teeth till mid-morning on a Saturday, and you start feeling like little fuzzies on your teeth, that's bacteria on your teeth, right? So you're brushing your teeth in order to keep that off your teeth and off your mouth. So that is attaching to the enamel on your teeth, the hard outer surface of your teeth. And when you eat sugary substances or drink sugary water or whatever that might be, juices, that is like a bacteria superfood. So the bacteria is ingesting that sugar or other refined starches in your mouth, and it's excreting acid. So that's what's going on in your mouth all the time. So the idea with fluoride is we want that enamel to be as strong as it can be. So for example, when you go to the dentist, you see a dental hygienist, usually it's the dental hygienist that is scraping plaque off your teeth. So what is plaque? Plaque basically are colonies of this bacteria, Streptococcus mutans, but it is bacteria colonies along with the food particles and the acid that are building up in your teeth, and so we're trying to get that off your teeth, right? So that's what's happening. So think of that at a micro level, and it's probably happened to just about everyone here. It has certainly happened to me. I mean, you maybe go in your garage or at a shed or some area and you find a pack rat nest. Or up in your attic, maybe you've got some bats or something, and you know what kind of a mess that makes. So plaque is the microcosm of that. I mean, it is that just on a smaller scale in your mouth. So it's nasty, right? We want to take it off. We want our teeth to be as protected as they can be to that substance that's on our teeth. I would say it's similar to like painting a fence or painting your house. You're putting a nice protective layer of paint to cover the wood, to keep that wood from, rotting out, right? So you're trying to protect the teeth at all times to keep the rain, all the bad stuff that's hitting that fence or, to protect it. So that's what we've got going on. The only... let's go. Kansas ranks 33rd in the nation, 65.4% of the citizens in our state do use fluoridated water. The large portion of that is not fluoridated, I think we all know, is Wichita, Kansas is not fluoridated. There have been efforts in the past to fluoridate Wichita, which have failed, but that is the largest area of our state that is not fluoridated. Dr. Britton talked about, systematic fluoridation, that topical fluoride, when you brush your teeth versus systematically how ingesting fluoride is increasing the strength of the teeth. What I would like to talk about just briefly is there are a lot of studies, there aren't studies, there are a lot of claims of studies that for various reasons fluoridation is not safe. Fluoridation is not linked to lower IQs or critical health concerns. The only significant documented health concern regarding the ingestion of fluoride, and that's ingested at 2 times the recommended level. Again, that recommended level is 0.7 milligrams per 1,000, I guess, which is equivalent to a teaspoon in a swimming pool, is fluorosis. So fluorosis is the modeling of the teeth where maybe they get little white spots or something on there. At 4 times the optimal levels, you might see fluorosis that actually turns the teeth kind of grayer or darker. And I would tell you on a personal account, I saw this. I did a mission trip in Kenya in 2022. And Kenya has some of the highest naturally occurring concentrations of groundwater in the world. And we saw a lot of those Kenyan children that did have darkened teeth as a result of the high levels of fluoride that they were ingesting. I will tell you anecdotally from the dentists that were working on those children, they saw less decay, but it's certainly from a cosmetic issue, we certainly did see that, and that's again at 4 times the optimal levels. So in Kansas, the groundwater we talk about, in Colorado's got a higher level of naturally occurring fluoride in the groundwater. Groundwater in our state certainly has a higher level, but nothing like what we're talking about in Kenya. It's going to be more like at 0.45. Actually, the CDC used to have all of our communities, where you could go and see what the natural occurring levels are. That's been taken down. I don't know if it's due to some of the budget cuts that have gone on, but that's something we used to be able to find. And obviously, Dr. Britton mentioned Salina was at 0.34 or something like that. So that's where those numbers had come from before. Really, to wrap up, again, I would like you to, I know there's not a bill on the table, but to consider fluoride as a natural mineral. It's something that's protecting our children, decreasing the number of cavities by up to 25%. And study after study will show that. It's cost effective. It's going to save us in Medicaid expenses and things like that as we deal with those underserved populations that, people that don't necessarily go to the dentist every 6 months. They don't necessarily have or are compliant and have the resources to buy over-the-counter or prescribed fluoride. So with that, I'll stand for questions when you have that opportunity, or again, you can reach me outside the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robertson. Next, we have Tanya Dorf-Bruner, the Executive Director of Oral Health Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I appreciate it. Excuse me, I'm working on a little bit of a cold, so I'll try to keep my voice together here. Thanks for the chance to be with you this morning. I really appreciate this. Again, my name is Tanya Dorf-Bruner. I'm the Executive Director of Oral Health Kansas. We're the state's oral health consumer advocacy organization. You've heard a lot of great information from Dr. Britton and from Kevin, and I won't repeat that, but I have a few more things to add that I think might be helpful. We just kind of understand what fluoride is and how it works and kind of how we came to where we are today. So as you heard already, all sources of water have fluoride in it naturally occurring. It's just ocean water, rainwater, everything already has naturally occurring fluoride. I do want to point out, when we talk about community water fluoridation, what we're really talking about is adjusting the fluoride. So as Dr. Britton said, in Solomon and Harrington, the natural levels are around 0.3 or 0.4 parts per million. So all we're talking about is adjusting it to that 0.7. And as Kevin mentioned, there's some areas in the country and in the world that have much higher levels than the optimal level. And so the adjusting can be reducing the fluoride. It's not always adding, it can be reducing. So just kind of want to talk about that. I want to point out last month, actually on January 25th, marked 80 years since water fluoridation began in this country. And I couldn't find the time it first started in Kansas, but I know for a fact it's been since at least the 1960s, probably late 50s, that we've been fluoridating in Kansas. So, we know that generations of Kansans have really grown up with that chance to be as healthy as possible. You've already heard a lot about needing fluoride in both systemic and topical ways, toothpaste and fluoride in your water. I just want to make one last point about that. If you think about why do I need fluoridated water if I have got fluoridated toothpaste? It's like if you're in your car and you've got your seatbelt on, but you've also got that airbag. You've got a lot of protection. If you've got the airbag, but you don't put your seatbelt on, you might be in trouble. But if you've got an old car without an airbag, you might be in trouble. If you've got both, you've got a lot more protection. So it's really the same principle there. We talked about that already, trying to skip over things you've already heard. And Dr. Britton talked about how, you've really got to get to that optimal level in order to make a difference. So, and I think I actually covered all that. Sorry, keep going. So let me actually back all the way up to where did we even start? How did we even get to thinking about we need fluoride in the water and how does it work? So I'm going to go all the way back to 1901. Excuse me, 1901. There was a dentist named Dr. Frederick McKay. He had just started practicing as a dentist, and he was living in Colorado Springs. He discovered something much like what Kevin just described. He discovered that a lot of the people in the area had some spots on their teeth, but their teeth were also really strong and really had very little decay. And he thought this was really interesting, so he started researching it, started exploring that. What he discovered was the naturally occurring fluoride in that area in the water was making their teeth, people's teeth much stronger. It was strengthening that enamel. A lot more study happened over the next several years, and by the 1930s, enough scientists have figured out what the optimal level would be, where, you know, we know that we don't want to be too high, we don't want to get that modeling, we don't want to get that fluorosis, but we want to get to the optimal level where it protects people's teeth and keeps them resistant. By 1945, that's when the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan became the first city to fluoridate. Bless you. The city was actually paired with a control city. It was designed as an experiment. It was paired with a control city that wasn't going to fluoridate their water. They designed this as a 15-year experiment to just study what's happening with the people. Are their teeth stronger? Are their teeth weaker? What's going to happen? After only 5 years, the results were so clear that the people in Grand Rapids had that better access to optimal fluoride, and they had much less dental disease. So at that point, the U.S. Surgeon General literally put out a notice that said any community that wishes to fluoridate its water supply should be, quote, strongly encouraged to do so after just 5 years. It was also at this point that national organizations like the American Dental Association began endorsing water fluoridation by 1950. So again, that only took 5 years before they had decisive enough results they knew. And there's a fun fact in my testimony. You've got a picture of a sculpture. Grand Rapids is so proud of the work they did to become the first city to fluoridate. They actually have a sculpture in their town commemorating water fluoridation. So there's a little fun sculpture in my testimony. I want to talk, excuse me, a little bit about who's at risk. You've already heard a lot about that from Dr. Britton, especially. Kids, older adults, people living in poverty are especially at risk when they don't have access to optimally fluoridated water. There's a couple of real-life experiments that weren't meant to be experiments that I want to share. One is with the cities of Calgary and Edmonton in Canada. Both had fluoridated water. In 2011, Calgary stopped fluoridating their water, and within 5 years, the dental decay, that magical 5 years, remember back about Grand Rapids, 5 years, the dental decay among kids was 146% higher in Calgary than Edmonton because they didn't have that fluoridated water anymore. Similarly, it was more like 20 years ago, the city of Juneau, Alaska stopped fluoridating their water. And again, in just a few years, very quickly, the data showed that the number of kids who required treatment urgently for cavities dramatically increased after removing the fluoride. So these weren't meant to be experiments. These are things that happen to real people. It just shows that when people rely only on fluoridated toothpaste, you're not going to have the protection that you need. And when optimally fluoridated water is not available, there is, as Dr. Britton talked about, there's a real cost to families, and there's also a real cost to programs like the state Medicaid program and other insurance programs that are going to be paying more for insurance claims for dental treatment. Kevin mentioned this a little bit. Some people talk about fluoride supplements as another alternative, and it certainly is another alternative, but it's not nearly as effective, and it certainly is not nearly as inexpensive. Prescriptions for just one family to have fluoride tablets could cost a few $100s a year. And that may not sound like very much, but it's kind of back to Dr. Britton's example. You can pay 75 cents per person to fluoridate, or you could pay a few $100s out of your family's pocket for those fluoride supplements. So you've certainly, I think, heard a lot today about lots of the reasons that optimally fluoridated water is a good investment. I also included an article in my testimony from the Journal of the American Dental Hygiene Association that just came out last month. It does a great job of addressing many of the current conversations around fluoride in the country. And actually, another fun fact, it was written by the state dental director in Michigan, where fluoridation started. But she pointed out something that I thought was just really fascinating and really helped me think about this more, and I hope it might help you as well. One of the things she talked about is in the 1600s, so in the 17th century in England, that's when they just started recording causes of death. They started keeping death records. And in the 1600s, at that time, teeth were considered one of the fifth and sixth largest or leading causes of death. That's, a long time ago, but it was something major that showed up. Now we might see cancer or heart disease. Teeth was one of the major causes. Even by the early 20th century, dental infections were still responsible for 10 to 40% of deaths in this country. And remember, it was 1901 when they discovered what fluoride was. So optimal fluoride really didn't start to happen in this country until the middle of the 20th century. In fact, another fun fact, in 1956, the world's first fluoridated toothpaste, Crest, actually was released into the, became available. So now, now we know dental infections are pretty rare. We think of dental disease as maybe a kind of a more minor thing in our lives. Many of us experience it, but it's more of a minor health issue. But it's a minor health issue because these scientific discoveries have and the proliferation around fluoridated water, the fact that we now have fluoridated toothpaste, have helped make sure that people don't have to live in fear of dental infections and dying of teeth. So I just want to kind of wrap up and say oral health is health, and oral health is wealth. When kids are healthy, they can learn. When adults are healthy, they can work. Maintaining optimal fluoridation in Kansas, as we have now, is going to ensure that dental disease doesn't, again, become a leading cause of death in our state. So again, generations of Kansans have grown up with fluoridated water. We know that future generations are going to be grateful for that investment as time moves forward. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for the chance to give you kind of some history on this subject, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tom Stiles with the Department of Health and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a power presentation teeing up. As it's coming up, I'll just point out KDHE has looks at fluoridation through two different lenses. Our Bureau of Oral Health, thank you, basically promotes fluoridation, echoes much of what the previous conferees have extolled about the benefits of fluoridation. My Bureau, Bureau of Water, and again, I'm Tom Stiles, I'm Director of the Bureau of Water, regulates the level of fluoride in the drinking water that's provided by our respective utilities. So, there it is. Here's our prime directive within the context of our regulations. We can't mandate fluoridation. It is a local decision, it's a local issue relative to that. So there is no aspect of the state mandating everyone begin to fluoridate. So it's left to the individual utilities and their customers to decide whether or not to engage in that practice. I mentioned this one? There it is. We regulate. Here are the numbers. We actually have a maximum contaminant level of MCL of 4 milligrams per liter that we do not want to see present in finished drinking water because it leads to unintended other health implications. We also have a secondary water standard of 2 milligrams per liter that requires utilities to begin to notify their customers that they're starting to see some elevation in fluoride present. And then the CDC's recommended level of 0.7 milligrams per liter continues to be the sweet spot of the appropriate level of fluoride that should be present within drinking water. It is what the utilities that actually do fluoridate strive to maintain. Almost all our public water supply utilities monitor for fluoride. That's a city, a rural water district, self-supplied schools or industries. If their water supply is driven by surface water, either directly or under the influence of where they're receiving it through groundwater system, they have to monitor and sample annually. If they're strictly groundwater, then they monitor once every 3 years. But the systems, the utilities that choose to fluoridate have to monitor quarterly to maintain a vigilance to meet those secondary and MCL levels of fluoride. So what happens when you do encounter high fluoride? It's a utility. First off, if a public water supply system encounters fluoride over 4 milligrams per liter, they automatically have to begin monitoring on a quarterly basis. If over a course of 4 quarters that they no longer have reached that 4 milligram per liter threshold, then the sample they can appeal to us to begin reduce their frequency back to an annual sampling schedule. If the samples come back over 2 milligrams per liter, the secondary regulation, then that public water supply needs to inform its customers within the next 12 months that there is elevated levels of fluoride there, and lay out the implications of that, as well as point out some of the options include alternate water supply for children, et cetera, in those cases. But it's the lowest level of public notification that's expected of a utility relative to the regulations of drinking water. Okay, so out of 850 municipalities and rural water districts, and another 30 or so non-transient, non-community, which again are the self-supplied schools or businesses and industries, 53 of those systems or those utilities actually fluoridate. So it's about 6% of our utility universe in Kansas that actually chooses to fluoridate. The other thing to recognize, as was previously mentioned, fluoride's a natural mineral. And in groundwater, if it's associated with deposits of historic volcanic ash deposition, that tends to be rich in fluoride. That tends to show us as elevations in fluoride within the groundwater supply. Town of Liebenthal and the town of Dighton have routinely seen over 4 milligrams per liter. They don't fluoridate. That's just in their groundwater. Dighton is chronically, typically over 3 milligrams per liter. We have another 7 public water supply systems, all groundwater, all out west, that see over 2 milligrams per liter, generally between 2 and 3 milligrams per liter there. And then there's, as we get into between 1 and 2 milligrams per liter, there's about 34 systems that will see levels in that way. Some of those, though, fluoridate there. It's not just a function of the source water. Now, fluoride can be treated out of drinking water. You can utilize reverse osmosis, ion exchange, filters, membranes, absorption, et cetera, as a means to lock up the fluoride and not let it transfer into the drinking water system that goes into the distribution system. Our minimum design standards within the public water supply section supports centralizing the water that's coming into a given system and then treating it with either some type of absorption or reverse osmosis, or in some cases lime softening will effectively reduce the level of fluoride there. Again, of all those systems here in Kansas, over abutting about 900 or so, Liebenthal, which saw the chronic levels of 4, they're the only ones that have chosen to treat. And they do it not at the city itself, but by putting place of use devices, reverse osmosis devices, in each of the households within town to take out that fluoride and reduce it to reasonable levels. Now, whether a city or utility is going to take fluoride out or it's going to add fluoride in, they have to get the okay from KDHE. Again, we'll run it through our engineering staff, but our minimum design standards speak to essentially fluoridation is essentially a chemical feed into the drinking water system. It could be powder, it could be a liquid, it could be a slurry, but it's basically a chemical add-on prior to putting it out into the distribution system. We need to see those plans and specifications and how that's going to be handled. And we touch on everything from what type of fluoride, what form of fluoride is being used, what's the rate of application, where's the point of application, where are you going to monitor, how's your laboratory set up to analyze for fluoride. Remember, once you fluoridate, you have to analyze quarterly, et cetera. Probably most importantly, you have to have a Class 2 drinking water certified operator in place to manage this system, and you have to provide us a copy of a resolution for a board for a rural water district or a city ordinance that indicates that you've chosen to fluoridate. We need to see that overt recognition that this was a local decision and provide that. That becomes part of our administrative record to ultimately lead to approval of the fluoridation system there. The general principle within our minimum design standards is one of do this in total sunshine to essentially do it with full cooperation, coordination, and approval of the local city or board administration, the utility itself, and the local health department. We want to basically promote that fluoridation is a exercise that's accomplished at the local level with all participants weighing in on whether or not they want to see that happen. In summary, again, Bureau of Water itself is neutral as to whether a system decides to fluoridate or not. The benefits and the risks can be weighed out elsewhere at the local level, but it is a local decision on whether to do that or not. If they do choose to do so, then it's our job to make sure they're going to do it right and that they follow what our standards are relative to that. The key to managing fluoride in drinking water is to maintain a vigilant sequence and system of monitoring that's provided to the utility to accomplish. And then when they see elevated levels of fluoride, that they take the steps necessary to notify the public, and in more extreme situations, take steps to mitigate the high level of fluoride there. And recognizing that in Kansas, some of our utilities just are dealing with natural fluoride present. Predominantly out west, where, again, the groundwater is associated with some of that volcanic ash deposits, but it's pretty prevalent throughout the state there. And it's just a matter then, as has been previously mentioned, of whether the system decides to boost it through fluoridation. For those utilities that do decide to fluoridate, again, the sweet spot is 0.7 milligrams per liter. That promotes good dental health and doesn't bring on the undue risk of unintended consequences as a result of excessive fluoride being intake from the customers. So I'd be happy to stand along with the other conferees for any questions from the committee. Appreciate your time.
Tom, I think you very well illustrated the differences across the state of Kansas. I'm 100 miles west of Liebenthal, and our pH on our soil and our water is much higher, which means it's slightly more alkaline. Here in the eastern part of the state is far more acidic. You folks back east here fertilize with lime to try to raise your pH. Out west, I use an acid formula trying to lower mine. The water at my home is probably about 0.7 to 0.8. We've had it tested before, and yet there are little pockets where it's far higher than that. And there are some health risks with higher fluoride, just like there is anything else on contaminants. But thank you very much for your presentation. Let's go through two more presenters first, please, and not till 10 o'clock. Do you have Dr. Julie Babcock, DDS, on WebEx yet? Okay, we are kind of dealing with dentist appointment schedule here this morning, I guess, trying to work around things. Are there some questions from the Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, where'd you go? Oh, he's sitting in the back row. He thinks it's church, I guess. I don't know. My question is, out in western Kansas, and I'm in Finney County, and I'm served by a private water district, if you will. It's a public water supply, but the quality seems to be declining, not just fluoride issues, but uranium issues and so forth. So my question, what struck me was on one page of your presentation, excuse me, it says that groundwater is being monitored every 3 years. With what I consider a fairly rapid decline in the quality of groundwater in our area of the state, is every 3 years often enough currently?
If everything was routine, yes, it's fine. Remember that surface water is very dynamic. It moves feet per second. Groundwater moves feet per year. But if whether it's uranium or fluoride, if the MCL is exceeded, the first thing it's done, beyond notifying the public, the frequency of sampling immediately gets increased. And so in situations like what you're seeing, you're not seeing once every 3-year sampling. You're seeing it quarterly. Garden City actually fluoridates, so they automatically are doing it as such. Towns Riverview basically encounters that because of the uranium issue. They're monitoring quarterly there. So if everything were routine, once every 3 years is fine. But when the number gets tripped, then one of the first 2 actions beyond public notification is, let's increase the frequency to see if this was a one-off event or if this is becoming a problem.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you so much for everyone that has testified so far, shared what great information. And again, this is for information purposes, so I really appreciate the subjects that we have reached. But I have a question. I think this is for Ms. Bruner, maybe. She talked about levels of fluoridation. And I know my constituents specifically were bringing up the fact that when 0.7 was established, however many years ago that we did that, we didn't have topical fluorides, mouthwashes, oral health care products, water-packed foods, soda juices, all filled with fluoride. So I guess the question is it time to relook at that, or is that part of the equation anywhere that we have increased our, just with our food habits, fluoride has increased tremendously in our bodies?
No, Representative Essex, that's a really good question. Actually, so when the optimal level of fluoride was first established in the 1940s and 50s, it was actually 1 part per million, or 1 milligram per liter. And then later on, that's when fluoride toothpaste came in, and that's when more topical fluorides came in. And so that review happened from what I understand, everybody kind of wanted it to happen sooner, but in 2011 is when the CDC reduced that to 0.7 in recognition, excuse me, in recognition of the fact that we did have more topical fluoride available. So kind of the speed of government is slow, and my understanding is it took the CDC, maybe 10 years or so to get to that 0.7, but it's probably, probably always worth looking at again, but yeah, it actually has been addressed because of that exact issue. Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this question is just for any of the presenters, but it was mentioned that Wichita doesn't fluoridate their water. I was just wondering, is there any evidence that shows that people who live in Wichita have worse oral health?
Yeah, I think that there was an effort in 2014, 12 to fluoridate water in Wichita, and there was a lot of data that was circulated. I don't have it with me, but certainly can hunt some of that down. There was some data that indicated that at the time, yes. I just don't know. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. But I can get them to you.
Representative Droege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this testimony. You pretty much covered it, but I wanted a reassurance on quality of fluoride that's put in water systems, because I've had a number of people tell me that it's a byproduct of other things, so it's like a trash from other collection. And I know that KDHE says that they monitor the type of fluoride, but I just wanted a reassurance on that.
If there's an influence from trash or anything else, it's going to be more than just fluoride. Those are all the things that are expected by the utility to screen out through their process. When they monitor, they don't just monitor for fluoride. They're monitoring for everything across the board. And when anything pops up, then the appropriate treatment has to be put in place there. But that monitoring provides the first level of assurance. The second is follow-on expectation for them to do things when things are being demonstrated to be at an elevated level there. So I would say that their drinking water, for the most part, is hovering around that 0.7 to 1 milligram per liter within fluoride for the most part. There are other sources of fluoride throughout their everyday lives that also they encounter there. So I give you a solid assurance that there is no undue influence that,
The implication on this was that the fluoride that was acquired by the public water system that was supplied to them to add fluoride to the drinking water was a byproduct of something else.
typically, if a system chooses to fluoridate, it's going to be in the form of like sodium fluoride or some such. The process that formulates that chemical to provide the feed certainly is something, it comes elsewhere from, mining of the appropriate mineral to do that. But there is no recycling of other materials to glean out fluoride to be placed within their public water supply. That would not pass muster by KDHE as the source in the form of the fluoride that's being used for fluoridation. We wouldn't allow a fly-by-night operation to provide the fluoride.
I appreciate that. That's what I assumed, but I had at least 2 or 3 people tell me that, and so I wanted to have assurance.
You have our assurance.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question can be for you too, Tom, if that's okay. So I guess for me, I think the benefits of fluoridation of drinking water are really clear. I'm just curious, have you heard of, any community that has had negative health outcomes due to additive fluoride in their drinking water, whether it was community-based fluorosis, anything like that? I've never heard of anything, but you've been in the biz a long time, so didn't know if you had.
No, certainly not here in Kansas. And again, the rationale behind our 2 regulation numbers. First off, once it goes over, fluoride goes over 4, you have not just modeling of teeth, but pitting of them. It begins to weaken the integrity of the skeleton itself, and so forth. So that's why it's an MCL, is to prevent, those are fairly deleterious types of impacts. Over 2, you will have a graying or a potential striation of the teeth there, at least historically. And that's what basically the reason for public notification is, to let people know, hey, be aware. In the formative years of children, from essentially newborn up to 9 or 10, is when that enamel and the teeth are really starting to take form. That's probably the primary targeted population that we want to make sure is not overexposed to that type of thing. Beyond that, we have not experienced or heard of that. There is a national narrative right now that is pointing out some new aspects of what excess of fluoride or presence of fluoride might be. I don't know if those have been truly vetted there. We know there's a court case that directed EPA to investigate, again, health implications of fluoride. We know Utah, their legislative body has taken the step to ban fluoride there, and it's at their governor's desk there and all that. We don't see the need for taking such drastic steps to deal with it for something that is, for Kansas, speculative.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't seen any evidence pointing to that either, and so I'm glad we're having this conversation. It seems like it's had a lot of success preventing dental decay and things like that in Kansas and elsewhere. So thank you.
Representative Gardner, do you have a question? No? Okay. All right, we'll go back. Representative Pickard, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, this is probably for you too. So back in 2012 or 2014, when Wichita voted the last time about fluoridation, do you know what the arguments were for the opposing side, against it?
No, and I'd forgotten that Wichita had quit fluoridating, so I don't know, but it's a huge population center with a lot of varied opinions on that, and they must have garnered enough anxiety to say, we don't know that fluoridation is the right public policy for our utility to pursue there and all that. But I never dove in, studied how the issue came to be or how it was presented there. But again, from us, we're Switzerland. Locals do what you will.
I don't remember, but maybe it's time to look at that again, especially with Medicaid wanting to cut back on Medicaid costs and all of that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now, at this time, we have Dr. Julie Babcock on WebEx has joined us. Welcome.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just joining, so I'm not sure exactly where we are right now. We've also, do you guys have Griffin Cole on as well?
She will be after you, I believe, second.
Okay, great. Allow camera. Okay, so I'm sorry, I've missed the first little bit of this. So is there a, I'm just trying to get into it. What's the exact question?
We're just having a presentation only here, taking no action on the value of fluoridation in water or differing views upon that. Based upon your profession and your experience, do you have any opinion for us?
I definitely have an opinion for you. I think fluoride is completely unnecessary in the water. There is virtually no studies that prove that it works, and there is a lot of studies, especially new ones coming out now, that prove that it is actually toxic. It's toxic to the brain in children, it is toxic to the bones, it is toxic to the teeth. It is unnecessary to have it in there. There is so much fluoride in the world right now in toothpaste and products. There is no reason to force medicate the entire population. And in my particular practice, I do see patients that do react to this fluoride. It makes them ill. They have problems with bones and joints. They can feel it. And when they get the fluoride out of their water, they actually feel better. It is not fair that we medicate everybody. There is no way to deal with dosage. I mean, a little baby, when they drink tap water bottle, they drink their body weight every 3 days in water, and they get an excessive amount of fluoride. Versus an adult who hardly ever drinks tap water, they get very, very little fluoride. So there's no way to control the dose, and there's no informed consent for this medication. So if you want to get your fluoride, nobody wants to take fluoride away. It's still going to be available, but there's no reason to put it in the water and force medicate the entire population. It's very expensive and very difficult to remove it.
Can I ask where you practice?
Yeah, I'm right here in downtown Overland Park.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Julie. We will also hear from Dr. Griffin Cole next. Griffin, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Please go ahead.
I've been a dentist for 33 years. I practiced in Austin, Texas for 28 of those years, and I'm now retired, but I am I'm traveling all over the country, and I'm testifying before a lot of city councils and state senates about this very topic. I think you guys, for those of you who are on the side of maybe ending this practice, you've got a lot of science behind you. Probably all of you know about the lawsuit that was it was a 7-year federal lawsuit that ended last year, and the judge did find against the EPA and said that there was unreasonable risk to children's brains at the level that's currently in water. So you'll hear a lot of pro fluoridationists say, "Oh, it's 1.5 or higher, so we're okay with water fluoridation at 0.7 parts per million." But that's not what the judge found. On top of that, you've got a lot of science, as Dr. Babcock mentioned. You've got, and most of it has been published in JAMA, which is the Journal of the American Medical Association. So although the ADA always claims that they've got them as their brother also supporting it, I think we're slowly seeing that that's just not true. Probably the most important thing that I would point out is you'll hear a lot of pro fluoridationists say that water fluoridation provides 25% reduction in decay. And you'll hear that number a lot. You'll see it even printed in some articles. Let me tell you where that came from. That came from a 2015 Cochrane collaboration review. Cochrane collaboration is about 37,000 researchers out of the UK, very reputable. All sides agree that what they do is good, is not biased. Well, they just came out with a brand new review in October of this past year, and what they found was, and they actually say this in their study, we made a mistake in the first review of 2015 by going all the way back to like 1946 on the studies. What they said was now as we look back carefully, all the studies before 1975 were of lower quality. And the one thing that we didn't have prior to like 1955 was fluoride in toothpaste. So all those studies, if they were accurate, at the most they showed about 4 less cavities in children, and maybe that does equate to 25%. That's where that came from. But in this latest review in October of 24, which you can find on a Medline search, they said the most that we could find was 1/4 of 1 tooth difference. So we're talking about 3% at the most. And they went on to say, we're not even sure that we have a lot of, like strong conviction that that's a very accurate number. So the same group doing the same review, getting a little more honed in, and they're now saying that we don't see anything that's significant at all. There's just too much fluoride, I think, as Julie mentioned. I mean, it's in toothpaste. It's in a lot of flosses. You can get it at your dental office. It's in some drinks. Any drinks that use fluoridated water have fluoride in them. There's plenty of access to fluoride if that's what somebody wants. You don't need to add any more to the water. On top of that, if you look into the studies again, there was two huge studies that were done in the UK. One's called Lotus, Lotus. One's called Catfish. Lotus was they looked at over 6 million adults because they have a public health service, so they can look at records and see who got treatment for dentistry. And they looked at 6 million adults, and their results was we didn't find anything significant between those who were drinking fluoridated water, which is only about 10%, by the way, in England, and those who weren't. Then they did a sister catfish study on the children up to age 12 and got the same result, about 3%. So we now have, studies both abroad and here showing that it's just not effective. So to me, as Dr. Babcock mentioned, it does cost some money. It isn't incredibly caustic. If you guys go and visit your water treatment plants, you'll see all the how the tank looks. Usually, it's pretty corroded, and if you look at the workers who have to work on it, they are completely garbed up in complete protective gear because that acid will actually eat through cement. And I think that's hopefully enough for you guys.
Okay, are there any questions? Representative Simmons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for both of the conferees. What professional associations are you members of?
Julie?
I am a member of the International Association of Medical and or Oral and Medical Toxicology, or the IAOMT.
I am a member also of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, but I was also a member of the AGD, which is the Academy of General Dentistry. I'm also a member of the American Association of Ozone Therapy. I was a teacher at a school in New Jersey for a while, and I was also an adjunct professor at the dental school in San Antonio years ago.
Any further questions? Representative Essex, you had an additional one earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was about the court case directly that's already been mentioned a couple times. So,
did you have a special question about it that I can answer? Or?
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I guess that there were orders from that court case, that federal court case, that EPA was supposed to, I can't remember the exact wording of it. What was the outcome and what was EPA's orders based on what the judge found in that case that it caused harm to children?
So the judge and the court itself cannot force the EPA to end it. So what the judge says is that he strongly recommends that you go back and revisit the science and make some changes. That's really the strongest thing that he could do. So the EPA has yet to appeal, and they can, which will drag this out for years. But, the judge gave it was an 84-page ruling and covered everything because he knew that they would try to appeal this. And so it was a very thoughtful decision. I mean, this was a 7-year lawsuit. Does that answer your question? Or
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. And I understand that that ruling was based on specific governmental studies. Do you know what?
Yes, good. I do. I do. That's a great question. Yeah. So the National Toxicology Program, NTP, is a division of Health and Human Services, our government. And they furnished 4 reports during that 7-year court ruling. So when the first report came out, which I think was in 2022, it was pretty damning against water fluoridation. Again, they were showing that what we're looking at, all these studies over the years, we are definitely seeing an inverse relationship between the amount of water fluoridation and the IQs of children. So the more exposure to fluoride, the lower the IQs. Well, of course, the EPA didn't like that, and they said, no, go back. We want to see it looked at again. So they went back and did a second report in early 23. They did a third report in late 23. And finally, the judge said, look, we'll do this one more time. And by the way, HHS had to be subpoenaed because when the fourth report came out again, it was once again confirming what I just told you. And Health and Human Service did not want that out. I mean, they would not release it. So it was subpoenaed and the court got it. And that's what finally did it for Judge Chen because he had seen enough. These are scientists by our own government who were looking at all the literature and came to the same conclusion.
Representative Droege?
I really didn't have much of a question, but I just thought that some of the previous presenters might respond to the newer information on that group that came up, you know, comparing their statistics on Tuesday K.
Yeah, I'd love it.
I don't see a response out here, but
Kevin Robertson with Kansas Dental Association. I don't have a response to that. I mean, we could get into battling fluoride experts, and we could bring in some folks too and talk about some of the opposite opinions that have been presented. But, you know, we'd have to do that at a later time, or I'd have to get more information for you, Mr. Chairman.
Since we don't have time for that, and I think everybody's talking about different levels. To the best of my understanding, the 0.7 level that's authorized here in Kansas, does anybody have a big problem with 0.7? I'm seeing the studies that showed some health problems with fluoride at 1.5 and much higher than that. So at the 0.7 level, which is what is currently available here in Kansas, it appears to be somewhat reasonable. I think we heard earlier that 6% of the operators here in Kansas actually fluoridate. And I also heard that that's a local issue, and it varies across the state from western to eastern. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's been an educational process here, and this was just for education only. I know we had a lot of people that wanted to testify. As chairman of this committee, I will reserve the right to allow and disallow anybody. If anyone has a problem with that, they can speak to me directly, not my office assistant and not members of this committee. The buck stops right here. I want to tell everybody on Tuesday, we'll have some presentations from members of the Kansas Farm Bureau about their issues with water in the trenches or on the ground. We'll see what they call this. On Thursday of next week, 1 week from today, we will have a hearing on Senate Bill 58. That's the bill coming over from the Senate concerning MIFAs and the slight changes that they wanted to make to that statute. Seeing no further discussion today, we are adjourned.